You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA. You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA.
Hello and welcome to episode 381 of the Fabulous Peltoncast, sponsored by our friends at Pagliacci Pizza. I'm your co-host, Kevin Pelton.
And I'm Tristan Carcino.
And we are coming to you back in Renton, Washington, home of the Super Bowl 48 champion Seattle Seahawks. That's too optimistic for you right now.
They didn't win.
I would say that Sunday's sports results in particular, it was almost as if I called it the biggest day in Seattle sports history.
There we go.
Storm lost, Mariners lost, Seahawks lost.
Were you cheering for the Storm?
Well, it didn't affect their draft pick, so
you were like, I might
won.
as well cheer for them?
They put on a good show, but could affect their draft pick next year. You never know. So,
that's good. Then that was a good positive.
A distinct we'll see on that one. I don't think they're planning on being on in the lottery next year.
Nobody's planning on being in the lottery.
Some teams, I think this year they didn't mind. They finally kind of acknowledged that at the end of the season.
Not when it mattered. In the one game that mattered, they didn't acknowledge it. Everything about sports is bad.
Okay, fair.
That is, when we last left this podcast, the Seahawks were undefeated. The Huskies were undefeated.
Still undefeated.
The Storm had a chance at the number 3 spot in the lottery. The Mariners, I think, might have been in first place in the American League West.
That's why they had the hammer.
1 week passes.
We need like the interstitial 1 week passes.
Yes, this SpongeBob. A few hours later, here we are. The Seahawks are in last place, not only in the NFC West, in the entire NFL somehow.
You're basically saying that we walked in on Sunday like Troy in Community in the Darklist timeline?
That is Seattle sports.
Oh, dear. Well, you know what's not the darkest timeline?
What's that?
Fresh hops.
There we go.
And this week's fresh hop beer, as again we pause our search for Seattle's best IPA, comes from our friends at Matchless Brewing in Tumwater. The Farm Harvest.
I feel like we've been in Tumwater a lot.
We have.
Okay.
CLS Farm Harvest Fresh Hop IPA. It's the most wonderful time of the year for hops, and you too. Our 6th annual Fresh Hop collaboration with CLS Farms is made with over 600 pounds of fresh Centennial hop cones straight from their fields to our stainless steel tanks. Look for big green floral notes, hints of lemon lime, and just a touch of refreshing cucumber.
A little hint.
There's nothing quite like the first Fresh Hop beer of the year. Which is not ours.
I love how positive that description is.
It's very positive.
For hops, and you too.
Yeah. They don't know that it rained today in Seattle.
Well, those hops definitely did not see this last weekend of Seattle sports. Sorry, hops.
They were already bred.
I hate to break it to you.
And the Huskies won by 33 points.
An unconvincing 33-point victory.
Get them in soccer. We'll get to that in a second.
Oh, God.
Well, despite the darkness that Tristan saw over the weekend, we do have several toasts to get to. Starting with something that happened on Sunday in the aforementioned Seattle Storm game, which was Jewel Lloyd. Congrats on setting a WNBA single-season record for points in the extended 40-game season. She came into the final game 8 points behind former teammate Breanna Stewart, who only scored 9 in the New York Liberty's regular season finale. It was her first time in single figures since 2021 in the last game of the season. And it took Jewel Lloyd less than 4 minutes to get the points that she needed to claim this record. Finished with the second highest scoring average per game in WNBA history, behind only Diana Taurasi in 2006. But also, perhaps bigger news.
Okay.
On Saturday, officially signed a 2-year contract extension with the Storm. You heard it here first on the Peltoncast.
There we go.
That this was a possibility going.
I mean, you could have said it wasn't a possibility. So.
I did not think it was going to happen.
I hear all takes over here, claiming victory for this one. I was going to make a joke about the Jewel Lloyd thing, but that's fine. You didn't give me a chance to. You pivoted to the positive.
Oh,
I was going to say also congrats to Ichiro Suzuki on breaking the MLB hits record in 2004. A similar achievement to what Jewel Lloyd did in one of the worst seasons in Storm history.
Look,
it's not going to be a positive podcast.
Oh, dear. It's going to be one of those podcasts. I was surprised by this. I was not shocked by it. We did mention there was a distinct possibility. So
the extension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But good news for the Storm. We'll talk more about their off season later on in the pod as we get into the roundup. Congrats also in order to Julio Rodriguez on becoming the second Mariners player ever to record a 30-30 season with his home run in, of course, a losing effort on Monday night. Joining Alex Rodriguez in 1996, he's the 44th player in MLB history to join the 30-30 club and just the fourth to do it at age 22 or younger. A-Rod, Mike Trout, Ronald Acuna Jr., the others.
Incredible. I paused.
Wait, you've pivoted?
No, I mean, this is Julio right now. Julio
No, but you had an anti-30-30 take
But
offline.
that's fine. I get no, that was online. We talked about that last week on the podcast. Yes, but A-Rod is part of this list.
Yes,
but the Julio we could be positive about right now. That is the only thing in the city of Seattle that we could be positive about.
again, fresh hops.
I guess the fresh hops. Look, Tumwater, a little too far away. Doesn't count in the city of Seattle. There ain't a single fresh hop. We are not living in the fresh hop region of Washington State. Do you understand that they are imported? We live near the fresh hop region of Washington State. So
I mean, I guess that's correct. So you're saying we should move to Yakima?
if we want a second thing to be happy about, that's it. But I was laying in bed.
I just like that as a start to a story.
I was laying in bed with the children and I was watching the game on my phone, and Julio hit the homer and I got up. I quietly was like, I have to get up for a second. And I went and found Luca and I was like, yes! It's one of those moments when you're just so down because you know the team is going to lose. And then Julio hits the homer.
See, I wasn't down because I knew the team was going to lose because I knew Julio was coming up.
I know.
And it was like, I was disappointed when J.P. Crawford didn't get on. Because it's like, oh, well, now this is only going to be a 2-run homer.
I mean, if J.P. Crawford had gotten on, it would have been
a 3-run homer.
Really nice.
Yeah,
really nice. Because that
outcome.
is, don't look now, but the Mariners' 2023 season is marked by incredible moments and huge letdowns. Shortly thereafter, just wait for the playoffs. Because I guarantee you this is going to come. This is not going.
Well,
it has
let's
happened.
Let's see first off if there are the playoffs.
Well, sure. How about that? Maybe wait for the
last
really,
week of the
really
regular
pivotal
season.
parts of the season, because that is what this entire season has been: is having these incredible moments like Julio getting the 30 for 30, and then the Angels scoring 3 runs the next inning, and you're just like, how?
Because there was a moment when he first hit that home run, I was like, are we going to need to do an emergency pod today?
Anytime you think that something positive might be happening, that's when you know you've lost. I've told you this. You can't let positivity creep in your brain.
A completely fair take. It just was a great moment.
Are the Seahawks going to win back-to-back Super Bowls? How do we even act when that happens?
Is Jermaine Kearse going to be Super Bowl MVP?
Anyway, you can't think those thoughts, because when you think those thoughts, that's when everything goes awry. Anyway, that moment was very exciting. And then there was such an incredible letdown by the Mariners because
Jared Kelenic striking out with the bases loaded and nobody up.
oh my God. I wanted Kelenic to have that moment so bad.
Oh, man.
But I could feel the strikeout in my bones. You know what I mean? That's what I told you when we needed Kelenic back, but also I will tell you who was not in the lineup when they won 8-0 the next night.
Oh, I don't think that was the reason. It's because Sam Haggerty started at DH.
I mean, what is their record when Sam Haggerty starts at
It's
DH?
1-1. They had previously lost.
500? Not bad.
They're 9-8 overall.
We
when
can
Haggerty
compare that to
starts.
some Ichiro seasons. Maybe not 2001.
I don't know how often Ichiro started at DH. That's a great question. All right, next up in our toasts. Congrats to the Everett Aqua Sox for winning the second half Northwest League title at 40-26. They are facing the first half winner, the Vancouver Canadians, in the best of 5 Northwest League playoffs, which started tonight. I need to now pause so that I can go look up the score of this game, which I was in progress when I was doing the notes.
At Funko Field.
That is correct.
That's what I had to add there. That's Harry Ford in the Everett Aqua Sox.
All right, they are high A now, I believe. Let's
Wow,
see.
this is complicated searching.
They lost 3-0.
Well, not even Seattle. That's a little bit too far away for me. If we're not counting Tumwater, we're not counting Everett either. So we can't take credit for the W's, but we can take credit for the L's.
Everett's closer than Tumwater.
That feels familiar.
The The Aqua Sox will also be hosting Game 2 on Wednesday before the series shifts to Vancouver for the final 3 games, if necessary. The Aqua Sox last reached the playoffs in 2018, last played in the championship series in 2016.
Wow. Those sure are some playoff records of high A baseball.
Back then, it wasn't even high A. We're also wishing a farewell to Luke Weaver, who was claimed off waivers by the Yankees after being designated for assignment by the Mariners. Gave up 4 runs in 4 1/3 innings as part of a bullpen game on Saturday. We will always have that one inning he pitched against the White Sox in his Mariners debut and struck out like 2 or 3 batters.
An incredible inning that Luke Weaver had. Do you
Jerry
think
Dipoto waited so long for that inning.
he must have been so excited during that one inning and so devastated every other inning.
Oh no, it didn't go super great for Luke Weaver, such as it is. But we are welcoming back to Seattle from a city that we cannot claim, Tacoma. Luis Torrens, who was recalled from AAA with Brian O'Keefe on the paternity list, awaiting the birth of a child, and Tom Murphy's return still TBD from injury.
I love that catchers are just a bunch of guys.
You know who's a catcher who was once a catcher who was a guy
Who is that?
that we remembered.
Who? John Marzano?
No, we've remembered the late John Marzano a lot, but Bill Hasselman is coaching third base for the Angels.
Oh, I saw it. So I was wondering about that. I figured that was Bill Hasselman.
I immediately went and looked it up. I mean, I've had to admit, how many Hasselmans are there?
I
out
saw
there
that
in
and I was
baseball?
like, wow, I think that's Bill Hasselman. I just love that you just got a bunch of dudes hanging around, though. That's what your catchers are. But Luis Torrens is legitimately, I would describe him as Mariner legend, Luis Torrens.
For sure.
And some of those moments that he had, I mean, I saw that literally. Today I learned also Luis Torrens was on the Mariners again when he was at bat. And I was like, I
had read, I think earlier in the week that he was at AAA.
I had a moment of, is this a highlight from last year?
I feel like his facial hair is different than last
Maybe
year.
it was.
Isn't it?
He was coming up and I was like, I recognize that guy, but I don't really recognize that guy. And that man's name was Luis Torrens. But
Torrens had the single that clinched them the second wild card last year, right?
I don't know about that. He had the single against the Yankees in like the 14 inning game.
Yes.
That was his big moment, and that's what makes him Mariner legend, Luis Torrens.
Without question. I mean, I was thinking of that game
and then
during
was
the Angels game.
DFA'd the next day.
That's correct.
So, Luis Torrens, I salute you for having gone through that moment and being back the next September in Seattle with a double in his first at-bat.
Yeah. Smoked it down the left field line.
And then it just died in the outfield.
It was a very strange play. Let's see here. He pitched the game that clinched the second wild card.
This is
but
Mariner legend
off
Luis
his left.
Torrens right here. How many amazing moments has he had as a Mariner? It's such a small snippet.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It was a great
Can you
time.
imagine years ago on the Peltoncast giving this much time to Luis Torrens?
Abraham Toro was also involved in that one, apparently. So, yeah, they locked up the number 5 seed in the AL playoffs with that
Not
win.
only was it inconceivable that the Mariners would have the hammer on the podcast, but a long toast to Luis Torrens.
All right, well, sticking with the Mariners theme, but also in our Seattle food update,
There we go.
it's the Eugenio Suarez Good Vibes Burger of the Week at Little Woody's, which features, obviously, classic beef patty, bacon, queso blanco, guasacaca, a Venezuelan avocado sauce, tostones, fried green plantains, mango peach salsa. To celebrate National Hispanic Heritage Month, we collaborated with the starting third baseman for the Mariners and one of the top Venezuelan players in MLB. The flavors of his burger are inspired by Eugenio's hometown of Puerto Ordaz, Venezuela. Eugenio grew up on these flavors, and the ingredients are held very close to his heart. For every Good Vibes burger purchased on Monday, September 18th, we will match you and donate the same amount of burgers to Casa Latina Seattle, an organization that advances the power and well-being of Latino immigrants through employment, education, and community organizing.
Let's freaking go. Also, this burger looks incredible.
Sadly, you were not able to taste it
tried.
and give it a review on the pod tonight.
I tried my hardest, but I
They closed earlier than we realized.
I saw the photo. The mango peach salsa is what pushes it over the top. The Venezuelan avocado sauce, the mango peach salsa, the tostones, queso blanco. Like, really, Gino. My problem always with the Little Woody's burgers is the burger patty. And I'm like, I want all of this, everything that's going on here, and the burger patty's fine. But I think Gino freaking crushed it on there.
You know what I had for the first time at Little Woody's a few weeks ago?
What was that?
The Pendleton burger.
I've had that before.
'Cause
It's
I
excellent.
almost-
Onion ring,
it is?
barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I almost exclusively order the burger of the week when I go to Little Woody's. That's why I'm going there, basically. And it was seafood month. Not my favorite, admittedly.
Ah, okay.
So I decided to get the Pendleton. It was a good time. All right, with that, we're keeping those good vibes in mind. It's time for your favorite segment.
Don't burn yourself. We got Mariners hot takes coming at ya.
This is a Seahawks take, of course. And I'm going to preface this by saying I don't necessarily believe all of this.
Oh, good. Good. Those are the best hot takes, Seahawks hot takes.
I was wrong. I said on the season preview podcast that there should be more than 3 contenders in the NFC. I was right about that. The Detroit Lions should be considered contenders, maybe even the Packers too. But the Seattle Seahawks, the only thing they're going to be contending for is Caleb Williams. After just one game, it was clear this season is a lost cause. Pack it up, boys. It's like they're speed running the Russell Wilson experience. They had 4 picks in the first 60 of the draft and ignored offensive line again. Put up a mission accomplished banner with 2 rookie tackles and some players who wouldn't start on 31 other franchises. Wasted a pick on a running back with no burst whatsoever. Hell, they drafted as many running backs as they did offensive linemen. That's true, look it up. When they already had an entrenched starter. Kenny McIntosh is the other one.
Yes, I'm aware.
They completely squandered the Russell Wilson trade, taking a cornerback who makes the Jeff Okudah selection look like a steal and have him playing a scheme which hasn't been good for almost a decade. Of course, for nostalgia's sake, they had to re-sign the linebacker who was on the team the last time they were good in, what was it? 2015? 14? This time pairing him with a tandem of fifth-year not picked up stars and Boye Mafe, who made some great play. Singular. But hey, everyone was worried about the run defense, and that was pretty good after the first series. But sadly, it's not 1976, and stopping the run doesn't fucking matter anymore, as I've been saying. And Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay worked this Ice Age era defense with 119 yards to Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua, better known as wouldn't have been playing over Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan if he had stayed here anyway. Not bitter. The worst part about this is that I have to admit I was wrong about Stafford too. And call him Matthew. You know I hate that. Offensive coordinator John Donovan, or Shane Waldron, had no answer with a second half that registered historically in the bad way. Shockingly, I agree with the hat because running the damn ball was the only thing they could do as long as it was Ken Walker who was the one running it. Tyler Lockett aged 50 years in one offseason. Now I see why he's more focused on real estate these days. Meanwhile, the quarterback who, if you recall, even the Cardinals didn't want to make a play for in free agency, and the Seahawks still somehow outbid against themselves to guarantee him more money than UW and Oregon will get in the first 6 years in the Big Ten. Gino is an excellent quarterback when there is a perfect pocket and someone wide open. But subtract either of those, and a wide receiver streaking down the middle of the field open looks like a scramble for 6 yards to him. Meanwhile, the fucking cavalry is a 41-year-old offensive lineman. By this logic, they should be claiming Michael Bennett off the waiver wire from the Washington State Lottery. Bennett is a full 4 years younger and retired when COVID-19 was just a footnote in a Chinese newspaper. The only person more washed than Peters is, of course, John Schneider. The person who saw that 9-8 record last year and plus 6 point differential and said, let's run that back. We're one Jake Bobo away from contention. A person who has avoided criticism while making one low value decision after another and somehow had a worse offseason than the guy who traded for Colton Wong. So guess what, John? You and Jerry have traded places, and that's why we're now talking about the Seahawks at the fucking 14-minute mark of the podcast. And there ain't no Julio on this team. All they've got is a wide receiver who got one of the worst penalties I've ever seen and doesn't even have cool hair anymore.
You underestimated how long we were going to talk about Luis Torrens. It was after the 14-minute mark of the podcast. Or were you trying to look that up?
No, I just...
Okay. That was in the take originally.
Yes. What minute mark was it?
It was about 16.
Okay, I was pretty close.
Not far off. I felt much more this way before I started doing the research on this game. And now, you know what? In classic... First off, by the way, I mentioned this to you offline. Like, you don't need to do hot takes about the Seahawks. We have a segment for this. It's called Area of Grievances.
I know, but the hot takes is our brand now.
We've pivoted to hot takes. But I'm pivoting to positivity.
Oh, my God.
Because when I first read, I could not listen to the Pete Carroll show on Monday after that performance. When I first read on Twitter him saying that it was a matter of the third downs, I thought that was complete bullshit. And it turns out it was only half bullshit.
Okay.
Because offensively, the Seahawks were not half bad on first and second down. They had an above average EPA on first and second down. And because of those Ken Walker III runs you mentioned, the fourth best success rate of any team in the National Football League in week 1 on first and second down. DVOA reflects this. They are 11th in offense. No, everything on defense is bad. And you're right about this. But look, Ben Baldwin already predicted that. Like, he saw
they were
things
worse.
quite well.
They were worse than I thought they'd be.
I agree that they were worse than I thought.
Especially
By the way,
without
why is
Cooper Kupp.
Boye Mafe catching a stray here? Like, the bizarre thing
No,
about
I
this
acknowledged his play.
is that Daryl Taylor, Boye Mafe, and Jared Reed somehow all ended up in the top 10 in ESPN's pass rush win rate at either edge or defensive tackle, despite the fact that the Seahawks did not stack Matthew Stafford.
Sometimes there's glitches in the computer. You're aware of this. Also, can
I
we
don't
just
know
go
what's
back?
about
Wait,
this.
you're just acknowledging this third down thing and saying that as if it's not one of the 3 downs? Like,
But
just being like they were historically bad on one of the downs. It's not like there's 100 downs. There's only 3 of them. And then Pete Carroll punts. Do you not know how football works? For Pete Carroll, there aren't 4 downs. There are 3.
Did the Seahawks attempt a fourth down at any point in this game? I don't believe they did.
I don't think so, no.
Well, here's the thing about third downs is there are less of them by definition than first and second downs because not only are there twice as many, sometimes you're allowed to convert a first down before getting to third down, which is what they did on their touchdown drive. They did not have a single third down.
Oh, yeah,
on that
I remember drive. I remember all of the drive they put together.
There was a moment there where we were feeling optimistic about things.
No, I will say at the beginning of the second half, I was saying to Chris, who I was with, I was like, it feels like this offense has been terrible, but actually their drives have been field goal, touchdown, field goal, missed field goal, and now we have the ball here.
Right.
And I was just predicting what was coming after that. That was literally to begin the first time the Seahawks got the ball in the second half because everything was terrible after that.
Now, the part that I sadly predicted on the season preview podcast was the part of the reason for the pessimistic Football Outsiders projection for the Seahawks offense was, hey, maybe not everyone on offense is going to be healthy for the entire season. And lo and behold, it took 3 quarters for them to lose both starting tackles to injuries. We still don't know exactly how severe those are to Charles Cross, who suffered a toe injury, and Abe Lucas, who's been dealing with a knee injury back to training camp. But, you know,
I can tell you that they signed Jason Peters.
they did sign 41-year-old Jason Peters.
That is how you know how the injuries are.
At least, yes. To the practice squad on Tuesday. This is basically the 3rd consecutive year that Peters has been an injury fill-in. He signed with the Bears during 2021 training camp, ended up starting 15 games in Chicago that season. Last year, he joined the Cowboys practice squad. It was the week leading up to week 1 rather than the week after week 1. Served as a backup across both tackle spots and left guard, played 10 games, started 1, and in the process became the 6th offensive lineman in NFL history to play a game at age 40-year-old.
There we go. I saw there was a graphic yesterday about Aaron Rodgers being the oldest player in the NFL, and the Seahawks were like, hold my beer. Hold my fresh hop right there.
one of those was Andrew Whitworth. So the Seahawks saw the Rams' success with Andrew Whitworth, and we're like, let's get a
Run it back.
a 40-year-old
Run
tackle
it
Lamar
back.
Anyways,
Things were very bleak there in the third quarter when it was like Abe Lucas is hurt, Charles Cross is hurt, Tyler Lockett is hurt.
yes,
Boom, 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 all in a row. Again, the Tyler Lockett injury he came back from.
he was evaluated for a concussion. And
The two
was cleared to
linemen
return.
we don't necessarily know about. Would Tyler Lockett have 2 catches for 12 yards?
I mean, part of it was there was just a lack of. They didn't run many plays, which speaks to this defensive scheme, and where I have some concerns, some much more legitimate.
But there were
concerns.
also in the second half so many 3-and-outs. You don't have to have 3-and-outs. They could have run plays of their own.
You don't have to have 3-and-outs, but to go back to my point about third downs,
This is
they make up a
just
smaller.
Take the complaint about last year and the previous year and the previous year. Oh, the Seahawks had long time of possession against them. It's all the same shit. We're doing this again and again and
I
again.
know. I'm aware.
It doesn't matter.
I'm the one who said this on the preview podcast. The players change, the defensive coordinators change. One person stays the fucking same, and the defense is never any good at the start of the season. You also were like skeptical of they've got a lot of moving pieces with Devin Witherspoon being out for week 1, Jamal Adams being out for week 1. It looked like a defense that had a lot of moving pieces. I'd put it that way.
But there were players that were getting picked on in the secondary who were experienced players.
They're experienced players.
I was curious PFF grades for players like Jordan Love, Mike Jackson.
Still Julian Love.
It's
Jordan Love remains the quarterback for the Packers.
Julian
This is a fun
Love.
one.
I will-
Fun little recurring bit.
he will be Jordan Love to me forever.
Just call him J Love.
Yeah.
Just play it safe. I haven't seen the full PFF grades.
Because it looked pretty brutal.
Yeah.
At least seeing it in front
Yeah,
of
it
me
did.
for those players. Rick Woolen was the only one who, if
Rick
you had,
Woolen definitely had the best PFF grade on defense. I think actually Bob Condota may have tweeted these.
if you could isolate players in the secondary who were near plays that happened when you're just like, oh, how did he not do that? Julian Love definitely did not look great out there. Same with Mike Jackson. Same with Trey Brown, especially, who I think was benched during the game.
Well, they were rotating him and Mike Jackson. That was the plan all along.
Okay.
And he did his play, I believe, about 70% of snaps.
Trey Brown did?
Yes.
Interesting.
So I don't think he was, benched due to performance whatsoever, I would say.
Do you have any other positives to say about this game?
Do I have any other positives to say about this game? Geno Smith was healthy.
I think that
Okay, here are the coverage grades from PFF specifically.
Okay, let's see.
Tariq Woolen was number 1 at 65. Julian Love was last at 32.5. The other person you did not mention getting picked on, Kobe Bryant at 36. So that's going to be one of the interesting things to watch. With Devin Witherspoon returning to practice with the intent to play, according to Pete Carroll, do they play him inside and take Kobe Bryant off the field, or do they put him in that left cornerback mix?
I think they have to play him inside. And he might be more helpful as far as tackling goes if he's playing inside as well.
It seems I don't know anything about NFL quarterback play. It should be pretty obvious to the listener by that point. It seems likely to me it's easier to pick up the nickel corner spot than it is the boundary corner spot.
They need Devin Witherspoon right now, and he has to be good right away, which I think is a semi-fair expectation for the 5th pick in the draft.
It's not an unfair expectation.
It's not like we're talking about, like where Rick Woolen was drafted.
I like, by the way, how quickly you pivoted from on the preview pod complaining about people writing off Devin Witherspoon during preseason of his first NFL season. And then when he doesn't play in week 1 due to injury.
I'm just joking for the team.
I know.
I love Devin Witherspoon,
But still.
but he better be really fucking good.
So the defense on third down was extremely horrible. Third and fourth down combined, they were 32nd out of 32 in EPA per play. The Rams had a 79% success rate on those plays. No other NFL team was better than 67%. But here's where Pete Carroll is half bullshit, because they were bad on first and second down too. They were 24th on those two plays in terms of EPA per play.
Wow, Pete Carroll's bullshit, huh?
I will say,
Okay, what will you say?
like the fear that I talked about on the preview pod was that the Seahawks would overcompensate to make up for their weak run defense last year. And that really didn't seem to be the case. Like the Rams,
There were a lot of linebackers on the field at some points.
they, at some point, yes, had 3 middle linebackers on a handful of snaps. But first and second down, Stafford was fine. 16 of 26 for 212 yards, 8.2 yards per attempt. He was on those third downs.
Still pretty
against
freaking good.
It's still pretty good, but I mean, it's now let me tell you about his third and fourth downs where he was 8 of 12 for 122 yards and 10.2 yards per attempt.
No, it was devastating.
that's
And
where
that
the
doesn't
game was
include the
won.
penalties as well.
Right.
So, I mean, the
The third down where it appeared that they had a stop had gotten off the field to keep it a 6-point game, I think at that, or was it a 4-point game? It was only.
I think the Seahawks were down 4.
Yeah,
And a
okay.
field goal would have made it a 7-point game.
Yeah.
But that was Trey Brown, right?
Yes.
That penalty, the hands to the face penalty. That one was very devastating. That was on third down. That doesn't count in here. I could see that basically if you were to take 2 of the best people in the entire world as far as a quarterback and a coach who are going to pick apart this defense when the defense was still getting together early in the season, it would be Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford.
I mean, one of the things worth remembering, it'll be interesting to see how Matthew Stafford performs this season. Obviously, I was higher on him, through the Super Bowl win than you and Ben were.
The anticipation is that this team is going to wear down over time. They might be a good team, but like seeing Aaron Donald and how much attention Aaron Donald takes, even just like on defense, watching just Aaron Donald on plays, he's being double teamed or he's in the backfield. There are a lot of players like that. I think people have underrated Aaron Donald because we've grown bored of him and he was hurt at the end of last season. But like,
I don't know if we've underrated Aaron Donald as much as questioned how much impact one player can have on defense.
one player can have that much impact on defense when he's Aaron Donald.
I will say I think the Rams secondary played much better than expected. They had a very good game plan against the Seahawks, similar to what they did in the Russell Wilson era.
That's the other question
Russell
is,
Wilson.
do you think that they just let the Seahawks run the ball? Like the Ken Walker plays, he had a lot of space on some of those runs.
Let the
not
Seahawks-
let them, but they were like, we can give this up because we know this stupid team will do this. But they didn't even really run that much.
No.
The Seahawks probably should have run more in this game. I think
They were about average in terms of situation neutral pass rate.
But if they were looking at taking away, they wanted to stop the pass in this game, be like, Aaron Donald's going to handle everything else. It worked. And I don't know if, obviously, you take Kyle Shanahan and you take Sean McVay as far as the coaches who are going to
The
be.
Seahawks have never played against Mike McDaniel.
Well, good luck.
Mike McDaniel's offense looked pretty damn good the other day. But what I was going to say with Stafford is...
It's a different offense that Mike McDaniel runs. But maybe against the Seahawks, he'd run the same one.
You think about, it's much more explosive. I agree with that. You think about the quarterbacks who have historically torched the Seahawks defense, like Phil Rivers, various backups for the Eagles.
Josh McCown.
repeatedly.
Yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Ryan Fitzpatrick. Matthew Stafford has kind of inched his way into that group.
Yeah,
feel
no,
like.
I agree with that.
Although he was out there scrambling a little bit too. So
Oh, when he ran. The thing that Matthew Stafford does and is capable of doing, the Seahawks defense is worse at. He and Sean McVay are a very good match for each other when he's not making terrible plays and being pressured. And I think that's where, when you get to Stafford, you can hit him, make him throw the ball with his left hand and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's when it changes. But they didn't touch it. And so if you don't actually, no matter what the numbers might say, if you don't actually pressure Matthew Stafford and he has time to make these passes, he's going to pick you apart. Like, I thought this team was better than that. I thought this offense was better than that. My expectation was that they would give up some, being there at the game. I was like, they're going to give up some points, but they're just going to keep scoring.
Obviously Cooper Kupp injury was big, but they've still got some pieces there, and they've still got Sean McVay. And like overall, they averaged 5.5 yards per play because the Seahawks pass defense or rush defense was good. This game was really lost offensively, the Seahawks not being able to take advantage of this very inexperienced Rams
But
defense.
think about last year when the defense was bad, and every year of Russell Wilson's late career when the defense was bad. The offense had to go and go and go and go to make up for it. And when you don't for even a short period of time, which it wasn't, when you look at it drives wise, it
I think
wasn't.
they only had 4 drives in the second half.
And some of those, they were so far behind the ball, be it like behind the ball, that they were in a little bit of desperation time.
And then had lost their 2 starting tackles.
Lost their 2 starting tackles, had their wide receiver make a stupid penalty.
I would say, if you're saying like the biggest weaknesses on the team, backup tackle is probably the single biggest positional
Well, I've
weakness.
got some bad news for you.
I'm aware. Well, Jason Peters is here for a reason. We know.
So
People still think Stone Forsythe is good because he happened to be like the second highest Seahawks draft pick in 2021, but that's because they only had 2 draft picks.
but his name is Stone.
You could be perfectly effective and be named Stone.
But they have to score on they have to kind of score on almost every drive if the defense is going to be that bad. And they have to score touchdowns sometimes too. And they did neither of those things. They kicked field goals. They scored or had scoring opportunities 4 times in the first half. 3 of them they kicked field goals. 2 they hit, 1 they missed. When they had to kick the field goal on the drive after they blocked the Rams field goal and kicked the field goal and missed it, it was pretty devastating in that situation. If they score a touchdown there, we're probably talking about a different game.
Yeah.
And they just didn't. They stalled out in really important moments. They didn't score touchdowns. They kicked field goals when they needed to score touchdowns, and that was it. That was the end of the game because of how good that Rams offense was in the second half, and the Seahawks couldn't keep up. It was 1 3 and out, boom, score for the Rams. 1 3 and out, boom.
We know it was a game where they did score that many points.
In Detroit last year,
At
that
Detroit
shit was
last
like
year.
a billion years ago.
Well, you know how long ago it was. You know who really led the offense much more than I remembered in this game.
Who was that? Chris Carson?
It wasn't that long ago. Chris
Okay.
Carson had already retired by
Not
that
Chris
point.
Carson.
Rashad Penny.
Yeah, Rashad Penny.
Had 17 carries for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. Healthy scratch in week 1. A shocking development in Philadelphia. We'll see if he gets an opportunity with Kenneth Gainwell now on the injury report. DK Metcalf had 7 catches and 10 targets for 149 yards. And the Seahawks, outscored.
Didn't TJ Hawkinson also have like a monster catch in that game?
Yeah.
It really was a long time ago.
Not just a monster catch. He had 8 catches for 179 yards and 2 touchdowns
Wow.
in that one before being traded to the Vikings midseason. And it ended up being the most important game of the season because that was the tiebreaker. The Seahawks won on over the Lions. That meant the Lions were playing just for pride and for the Seahawks on Sunday Night Football in Lambeau Field on the final night of the NFL season. One we will not forget, even though it didn't really end up meaning anything in the end.
I still can't believe that the Seahawks are 11th in DVOA on offense.
Yeah.
DVOA might be broken this year. Anyway,
We'll have to continue to monitor the situation. They're not that much lower than that in EPA per play, though. So that was emblematic of the Lions' seasons. They were 7th in offensive DVOA, but their defense, which was ranked 27th, kept them out of the playoffs on that tiebreaker. Through one game this season, they are 6th and 24th. We'll talk some more about the context for that. But you want to talk about a marriage. You talked about the marriage of Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Well, how about the marriage of Jared Goff and Dan Campbell, as well as their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson? Jared Goff has not thrown an interception since last November 6th against Green Bay, a stretch of 10-plus games and 359 passes that is now the 3rd longest in NFL history. The record is 402 by Aaron Rodgers, while Tom Brady had a stretch of 399 passes without an interception that ended against the Seahawks last year in Munich at the hands of course, noted interceptor Cody Barton. You look at Goff's entire career in Detroit, a 1.3% interception rate. He was under 2% in 2021, even before this streak. So it's not completely out of nowhere. Although, as he acknowledged, talking about it earlier today, there's always going to be some luck in any streak like that. Goff's completion percentage is down a little bit the last 2 seasons from 2020 and 21, but his yards per completion has bounced back after going under 10 yards per completion his first year in Detroit, which ranked 30th of 31 qualifying quarterbacks that season, ahead of only Ben Roethlisberger. He finished 10th in EPA plus CPOE composite last year, almost entirely the strength of his EPA per play, which ranks 7th. Jared Goff's a good quarterback.
and so you're basically saying that EPA he was very good. The completion percentage over expected.
Has never been any good. He's the anti-Russell Wilson in that regard, who, by the way, amazing CPOA for Russell Wilson.
Was
in
he?
week one.
I didn't see any of that, and I was so bummed about it because I was like, I could feel it in my bones that Russ was going to be good this year.
I was confused because I watched, I had it on Red Zone while I was on press row because I couldn't stream the Seahawks game. And it was like both offenses were moving it up and down in the field. I was like, oh, this game's going to be a shootout. And then it finished 17-16.
They just
I was like,
didn't
what
score
happened?
touchdowns. It's very strange. But Russ ended up having a pretty good game overall.
He had a great CPOE game and an okay EPA game, I would say. So
Jared Goff is a little bit of a fair weather quarterback. He is very good in ideal situations. He's not necessarily making amazing passes or something like that, squeezing the ball in.
correct. He plays well in structure, really takes advantage of when you're, able to use play action, which you always are able to use. It doesn't
Does he
depend on
use
rushing
almost any
success.
play action, by the way?
I don't know. I didn't watch half of this game. I was at the Storm game. I just told you that.
But is there a stat that you can look that up? It felt like they used almost no play action in the game.
There probably is somewhere. It's going to take a while for me. to look
Anyway,
this up,
let's talk
so.
about this game first.
Hold on. I gotta look at the Russell Wilson stat line though. Let's see. Russ finished 27 of 34 for 177 yards, so 5.2 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Yeah, a lot of underneath stuff, as it turns out. The Lions traded down to draft Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12 overall, then subsequently traded starting running back DeAndre Swift to Philadelphia after previously letting goal line back Jamal Williams leave in free agency. They also added veteran David Montgomery from Chicago, and he got the bulk of the work on Thursday, with Gibbs getting 7 carries and 2 targets in 19 snaps. Dan Campbell said he wanted the rookies to get a feel for the NFL game, and Gibbs will get more touches going forward.
He looked good in those few snaps. As
Yeah.
somebody who has him in
7
fantasy,
carries for 42 yards.
he looked very, very fast. It was similar to watching Breece Hall on Monday night, where maybe not quite as explosive as that, but you were like, this person is moving. Again, we talk about how running back value. I'm trying to think of how we describe this. Running back value is primarily derived from offensive line.
Running back results are primarily derived from offensive line, yes.
But Jahmyr Gibbs in this situation looked like somebody who was moving, similar to how Ken Walker looked also. Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet did not look like the same type of running back to me in that game. And we could talk about long-term their value, but in that situation, Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery I think had a good game also, but Jahmyr Gibbs looked way more explosive than David Montgomery did.
I mean, not surprising. David Montgomery did score a touchdown in that one. Let's see here. I'm scrolling down. Geno Smith was not recorded with a play action attempt on Sunday. Woof. That was not the good offense.
But the thing is, they kept waiting. That's the problem with Pete Carroll and maybe subsequently Shane Waldron, because I don't think Pete Carroll's in his ear being like, don't do play action right now. They did the fucking NFL coach thing where they were like, we have to do this, then we can do that.
But they did run well in this situation.
I don't know. Maybe they just
Usually
didn't have.
that's the issue.
But they just didn't do it. They felt like if they weren't in a plus situation that they couldn't run play action.
Now, one rookie who did get a huge workload against the Chiefs was second-round pick tight end Sam Laporta, who had 5 catches in as many targets for 39 yards. He's the replacement for Hawkinson after he was traded to the Vikings. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 6 catches and 9 targets for 71 yards and a touchdown, similar to his averages as a Pro Bowler last year, and Josh Reynolds had 4 catches and 7 targets for 80 yards. The Lions are dealing with their own tackle injury. Taylor Decker, who started all 17 games last season, played through an ankle injury in the opener, missed practice on Tuesday. If he's unable to play, Pro Bowl right tackle / quarterback Penei Sewell will likely move over to left tackle.
Wait, why is he / quarterback?
Because he converted a huge third down last year. Or you don't remember that?
I don't remember that now.
Oh, it was a great time. A great moment. 1 of 1 for 9 yards, I believe. We mentioned that the defense kept the Lions out of the playoffs last year. They held the Chiefs to 20 points and got a 50-yard pick 6 from another second-round pick, Brandon Branch, in his NFL debut, but did not sack Patrick Mahomes, and obviously benefited from a series of Kadarius Toney drops.
And just wide receiver mishaps in general for the Chiefs.
Yeah, with Travis
Not gonna help
Kelce
it.
out. So their DVOA was not very strong defensively, even although that's without an opponent adjustment. So they'll benefit a little bit from that.
I'm very fascinated to see if the Seahawks offense rebounds after that game. I think this is every week is going to be important at the beginning of the year. If this is another shootout, they're able to play offense the way that we think that this team can. Again, partially joking about how down I am about the team. If they lose this game and they lose this game badly, if the defense gets broken and the offense is good statistically but doesn't score any points, we might be talking about a very long season here because the schedule is not that easy.
We talked about it, in the preview. I don't know if we did keep that in the preview because it was kind of what Ben and I were talking about when you took a call. The back half of the schedule is rough, so they need to be good going into the bye.
Well, and especially playing the Rams at home, that is one of those games that you have to chalk up as a victory.
I mean, we talked about, the optimistic case for the Seahawks is, they're in a division where two of the teams, we don't expect to be competitive. Well, guess what? They already got one loss to those teams.
So you have to beat yourself. But if this is a situation where the offense has to be excellent in this game, I think, to really reframe the season. And the defense has to play quite a bit better. This is one of those games that they have to look significantly better than they did in week 1 against a pretty good team. I mean, they obviously came off beating the Chiefs. There was some luck involved with that. I think the Lions are almost exactly what they were last year. And the hope is that the Seahawks are closer to what they were last year, which the stats tell us they are. And that if it is like the Seahawks last year, that is still better than the Lions because it was in week 3, but I don't know if that's actually the case by the end of the season.
I think that is a very fair assessment.
And I think the Seahawks in general have lost 7 of their last 10 games dating back to playing the Buccaneers in Germany. And right now, I think it is difficult to remember the last time that the Seahawks played well in a full football game. And they've done some things well, but they need to have a game where we look at it and we say, similar to what we were feeling early in the season, right?
Yeah.
And some of those victories where they did have dominant
The Lions
victories.
game was one of those games. Like, we didn't necessarily know how good the Lions were yet at that point, but still.
What was the good win? The Chargers last year? Did they beat the Chargers? I think they beat the Chargers, and we were like, that was, they looked good. And I think that was the last time that we looked at the Seahawks and we said, wow, that team looks really good. So there definitely was a lot of getting by happening to make the playoffs at 9-8 because of schedule or whatever, by playing pretty well at the beginning of the season and fading late. And they have to do something positive again.
They kind of dominated the Giants. That was a pretty good win. Also previous to that 3-7 stretch, though. In that 3-7 stretch, they beat the crap out of the Jets, but that wasn't really that meaningful. So no, I wouldn't say that there's any of those that you look back afterwards and like,
with some brutal
really
losses in there, right? That Raiders loss was a brutal loss. The
Carolina?
Panthers loss was a brutal loss.
I finally got around to watching quarterback and was reminded of the Seahawks going 0-4 against the NFC South last year.
Oh my God.
Ooh, buddy. Still waiting for that Marcus Mariota breakout.
Oh, sorry, week 4. I said week 3. Week 4 of last year.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. We went into that Falcons game.
I mean, that's why we needed that Lions win, because at that point you were like, I was thinking that my preseason
I was
projection
out.
that the beating the Broncos would be the high point of the season. It was going to all be downhill from there. Was feeling very
I was
accurate.
barely paying attention to the NFL in general, not to the Seahawks in general at that point, because I was like, I cannot watch this. It is so brutal. After being in that Falcons game was just a heinous experience. So, I mean, you hope that week 2 that magic comes earlier. I think this is probably going to be a high-scoring game, but obviously in a high-scoring game, you would look at the Lions, who probably have better quarterback play, who probably have better receiver play, who probably have more explosive running back play. Maybe they have some offensive line injuries. Well, guess what? The Seahawks do too, and they're at home, and they have Aiden Hutchinson on the other side.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Hutchinson at all.
Who is a more disruptive defensive player than anybody on the Seahawks. And I don't know how you could view this as anything, but the Lions should be pretty heavy favorites.
Well, what are you going to say in terms of chances of victory here?
I think it's like a 28% chance of victory.
This is... I'm at like 40%. That's a little lower than FBI, or a little higher than FBI, I should say.
I think it would maybe be like 45% if the Seahawks were at home. I think that's maybe even like a home.
I think it would be like 50-50 if they were at home.
This team just isn't very good. They haven't done anything in a long time to prove to me that they're a good team. What are we basing that off of? I mean, honestly, like, what are we basing that off of? It's so funny how different this conversation is than last week. I get it that statistically the team looked pretty good by the end of the season, and the offense looked pretty good by the end of the season.
They were, just outside the top 10 in DVOA.
But also, it was a long time. Like we talked about those games.
Early games aren't necessarily less predictive than games later in the season, is what I would tell you.
I agree. It's just that they have, since week whatever last year, since the bye week last year, the Lions have been in one direction and the Seahawks have been in another direction.
That is not inaccurate.
What? Oh, you're at 40%?
Yeah.
Who do we get to talk about next? The rundown?
When do you want to do the Mariners?
I want to do the Mariners right before the second to last. We'll give them the penultimate because they're in the wild card.
Yes, although they are not second in the AL West anymore. All right, well, let's get into the roundup, starting with the Sounders, who are coming off the international break. They still sit second in the West because LAFC lost 2-0 at Portland, now has just one match in hand. Still enjoyed this quote from Brian Schmetzer on Tuesday via Sounder at Heart. I'll go on record saying it's a little false. We're in second with 6 games to go. That's positive. That's glass half full. That's the Pollyanna viewpoint. The reality is we have to take care of business. We have 4 on the road and 2 at home. That's reality. We have to work hard in training, work hard in games to steal some points in this 3-game stretch and close out with a couple of good games at home. That starts Saturday night at FC Dallas, which is only the 9th and final playoff spot in the West. Heat could be an issue for the Sounders. The forecast calls for a high of 88 on Saturday in Frisco, Texas, with temps still in the 80s through game time. Christian Roland expected to travel with the Sounders to this one. We'll see if he returns to play yet. Schmetzer said he's encouraged by his progress, but still wants to make sure that he's completely healthy before he's back on the field.
What is the Pollyanna viewpoint? I am not familiar with this as a term.
Pollyanna?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where the derivation of that is, but
that's like a term for like positive?
Yeah. Huh. We're going to do some Peltoncast etymology here?
I literally just had not...
You tripped you, clearly.
An excessively cheerful, optimistic person.
Not you today. OL Reign suffered their 8th consecutive loss in a semifinal knockout stage. Typically the start of knockout play in the NWSL Challenge Cup or in the playoffs, although that would not be the case this year with them expanding to 6 games. On Wednesday, losing 1-0 to Racing Louisville, with the potential for 3 games in 7 days had they advanced to the NWSL Challenge Cup final. They decided to rotate their lineup for the semifinal. Started just one of the Olympians with no subs before the 66th minute. Jess Fishlock and Megan Rapinoe came on in the 77th minute with the Reign looking to get the tying goal, and they had 16 shots as a team, but just 2 of them on goal. With that in the books, the focus now returns to the NWSL regular season, beginning with a derby at Portland on Saturday night. The Thorns sit second in the NWSL table, 2 points up on the Reign by virtue of 2 more draws, 2 fewer losses. Also, one bit of OL Reign news this week. They announced that they have picked up their 2024 option on Fishlock's contract, ensuring the reigning NWSL MVP will stay in Seattle. Seattle Storm, as we mentioned, will enter the lottery in the number 4 spot, which means they will go into that drawing, which will be held at some point, presumably in November, during a key non-conference college game on ESPN.
In a college game?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it makes sense. Those are the players you're drafting. In the NBA, they'll do it during halftime of the G League. They have a 10% chance at the number 1 pick, a 14.5% chance at the number 2 pick. Is the 4th seed. They cannot get the 3rd pick.
What?
Because by definition, they only draw for the top 2 spots. So by definition, whichever team doesn't get one of those, if they don't, will be ahead of them.
Interesting. Okay.
So they are most likely 75% to finish with the 4th pick. That's actually the bigger difference in the chances of 1 and 2 between being the 3rd and the 4th seed going into the lottery, is that there you are very likely to pick 3rd, obviously.
Yeah.
But the Los Angeles Sparks will hold that spot. The Indiana Fever, last year's number 1 pick, Aaliyah Boston, have the best odds. Number 2 is Phoenix.
So let me ask you, as the season is over now, right, for the Storm?
It is over, yes.
Okay. Had they lost to the LA Sparks, this was about 2 weeks ago, right?
It ultimately would not have determined.
It wouldn't have mattered.
So Chicago won on their last 2 games of the regular season. So LA ended up finishing a game behind, and Chicago had the tiebreaker.
Do you think so? LA is in that third slot.
Yes.
Were they a game or 2 away from that? Like, would they have made it so that was the case either way?
They could never have caught LA. No, the difference, because it's a 2-year record, the difference in their 2022 records was much too large. Now, the one thing is, it could work for the Storm's favor if they're not a playoff team in 2024, because the only team that had a worse record than them this season is Phoenix, who does not have the control of their draft pick in 2024. They've already traded a swap to New York of all teams.
Wow. I would just never, in a situation when there's only 4 lottery teams, ever trade a draft pick basically in the future.
It's a pretty bad strategy.
Especially because it seems like the players who are coming out of college, almost every year there's somebody who's a franchise-changing player.
There hasn't been for, well, I guess between...
You told me there was a player like last year.
Up until Ryan Howard, who has been an all-star for first 2 seasons, and then Aaliyah Boston this year.
Aaliyah Boston, yeah.
Yeah, there hadn't been for a while, I would say. Like, the Storm briefly held the number 1 pick in 2020. The player that ended up getting drafted, Charlie Collier, out of the league in her 4th season. And basically no one in that draft has really proven all that valuable.
So this is a more recent trend.
It's not necessarily a more recent trend. What I will say is, like, because of the fact that there's early entry in the NBA, players can kind of slot around, so there's not as big ups and downs. And there's also 30 teams, so the differences between, the players aren't as pronounced as they are in a 12-team league.
Yes.
So we'll see what the 2024 draft looks like, as we've talked about repeatedly. All of the top players in this year's draft have the option to go back.
Let's say that almost everybody comes out. Who would be the top 4 players, assuming every single player came out?
If everyone who is eligible for the draft is in it, I would rank them Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, Cameron Brink, Angel Reese.
So Angel Reese could be the 4th pick.
Hypothetically.
That would be shocking to me.
I think Paige Beckers is pretty unlikely to come out because she's only played 2 seasons and 1 full healthy season.
Who's next after that?
Who's the 5th best player? I probably should know this, but not off the top of my head.
Bad news for the Storm.
Not necessarily. There's also a full season to go. Things can shift.
A full college season to go.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So, Storm's top 7 players are now under contract for next year in terms of minutes played with that Jewel Lloyd extension, along with rookie point guard Jade Melbourne. They have 3 free agents. Gabby Williams, who likely won't be able to play in 2024, she reiterated due to prioritization, but did say she plans to be back in the WNBA in 2025 after the representing France in the Paris Olympics. And then backup point guard Yvonne Turner, who mostly played a leadership role this year, and then reserve forward Joyner Holmes as a restricted free agent. But basically the whole core is going to be back if the Storm want it, and they have enough cap space to make a max offer this offseason.
Who's out there this offseason?
Now, one of the things we also saw is a number of the other free agents besides Jewel Lloyd signed extensions. Kalia Copper did on Sunday with the Chicago Sky, Kayla McBride with the Minnesota Lynx. So the guard talent in particular, the perimeter talent, has kind of dried up. Technically, Brianna Stewart is out there. Don't think she's coming back. Neko Ogwumike is a potential free agent. She's played her entire career with the Sparks. Her sister Shanae plays with her in L.A.
Is there any reason to think that let's say that she was on the market, Storm had max money. Is there any reason that she would sign with the Storm versus staying in LA?
Practice facility, I suppose. I don't think she's likely to go anywhere. I mean, the single player that's going to be most interesting to watch in free agency is Skylar Diggins-Smith, who sat out this entire season after giving birth. Diana Taurasi was asked about the possibility of playing with Diggins-Smith again next season, and no commented in it at the Phoenix exit interviews.
Why? I feel like you're implying something that I don't know.
Her relationship with the organization seemed to deteriorate.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. She, again, unrestricted free agent.
How good was Skylar Diggins-Smith prior to missing a season?
I think she made all WNBA first team in 2022.
Okay, so that'd be huge.
And both Noelle Quinn and Jewel Lloyd asked about, biggest needs for the Storm. Immediately said a true point guard. Sammy Whitcomb, they had good results when she played there in the second half of the season, but that's not her natural position.
No, definitely not.
I do worry a little bit because Jordan Horston settled in. She's likely to make the all-rookie team. She's played well at starting small forward after Gabby Williams was injured. You've got Jewel Lloyd. You have Kia Nurses under contract for next year, played better at the end of the season. If Sammy's in the mix at wing, that's a lot of players there. So maybe she plays some at point guard. That's what Noelle Quinn seemed to indicate, but isn't the starter there. So we'll see. And one of the interesting things about free agency in the WNBA is because of the fact that it takes place way before the draft, you don't know which of these players are going to enter. They kind of got to fill their needs in free agency and then, figure out who the best player available is.
It takes place even before you know who's going to enter the draft.
Yeah, because you don't have to decide whether to enter the draft until after the college season.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So things aren't necessarily extremely bleak for the Storm right now.
No.
The outcome's mildly bleak. You can't tell me that it's not.
It's bleaker than it could have been. If you end up being the second worst team in the league and only getting the fourth pick in the draft out of it, that's kind of a disappointment if they are good enough to make the playoffs next year and this year's record doesn't matter. So
if they make the playoffs, they cannot be in the lottery.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me. So the lottery is the 4 teams who missed the playoffs this current season.
Correct.
But your order is determined by 2-year record.
Correct.
Oh, so you can't be in the playoffs. You can't be epically bad.
So that's why it mattered whether Chicago and LA were in the playoffs this year.
I see. Well, they better not make the playoffs next year. Or, depending on how things shake out. There's a long way to go. Not that many teams miss the playoffs, though. You kind of, in a year that you miss the playoffs, have to really capitalize on it.
And look, they haven't missed the playoffs since they drafted Brianna Stewart number 1 overall. They haven't had a pick anywhere near this. So this is a big opportunity for them. And then they've got the cap space, and now they have a bunch of players on rookie contracts, which is something they didn't really have before.
Okay. Well,
the other thing they have for this year specifically is Ezzie Megbegor signed a 2-year contract when she could only negotiate with the Storm. The Storm ended up giving her a lot more than the minimum this season so that she's making much less than she would have if she were a restricted free agent this offseason, which she would probably be maxed out.
Okay. And there's still a 25% chance of getting the first or second pick. That's
Correct.
not a tiny percentage.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right, quickly on UW men's soccer. They were part of the rough Sunday in Seattle sports as they drew 1-1 at home with Cal State Fullerton ahead of the start of conference play this weekend in the Bay, falling out of the top 25. That road trip to the Bay Area will include a matchup Thursday night at number 1 Stanford. So a second chance for the Huskies to take down a top 5 team this year. Although I believe Indiana then subsequently lost a second time. They've fallen into the 20s.
Are we checking on volleyball? Are we watching UW volleyball?
We're keeping an eye on them.
Okay, where are they ranked right now?
I don't know if they're ranked. No,
Because I did see on ESPN earlier today. I love the hype around Nebraska volleyball. I will say, but let's keep them in the Big Ten. That's it. They can stay
oh, good.
as a volleyball school.
How generous! And
Once we're in,
magnanimous
they
of
could
you.
stay. But I love seeing on ESPN Nebraska versus Stanford volleyball as kind of like a highlighted event in prime time. I think it's pretty cool to see.
Oh, is it? Interesting. That is cool.
That was on earlier today, and I'm pretty sure Nebraska won. And I really feel that with my Big Ten pride.
UW is 26th in the rankings. They're the top other receiving votes. I don't think they've really played anyone exciting yet in volleyball, so not much of a chance to move up.
Nebraska's ranked number 4. Wait, look at the Big Ten represented there, by the way.
Yeah, Wisconsin at number 1. I didn't know Wisconsin was a volleyball power.
Number
Oregon
1,
at number 7.
4.
Minnesota at number 9.
What? Oh, yeah, you had Oregon. Okay.
Yeah. Purdue at 17. Ohio State at 19. Iowa. No, they're not, that's the wrong Iowa. Not that Iowa.
We don't get that one.
Washington State at number 11. We definitely do not get. The
Yeah.
Pac-2 gets that. All right, you wanted to do the Mariners is the penultimate here. They won a game, which was nice. It snapped a 4-game losing streak on Tuesday night. They are now a game and a half back of the Astros in the AL West, a half game back of the Rangers for the second wild card, and tied with the Toronto Blue Jays for the third wild card, which may raise a question to you. How the hell did they break a tie? What are the tiebreakers looking like for the Mariners?
Yeah.
The tiebreaker versus the Blue Jays will be determined by the team's in-division records against their respective divisions, which
Okay.
is good news if you play a bunch of games against the A's in your division.
Yeah, that's kind of the Angels too.
Well, not on Monday night. Not good for the Astros against the A's, weirdly. The Mariners are 13-18 so far against the AL West. They have a lot of in-division games left. The Blue Jays are 12-25 against the AL East.
Wow. I mean, the AL East is really good. I get that there's 2 teams ahead of them. I guess both teams have 2 teams ahead of them in division. They're kind of just both in really hard divisions.
But again, the bottom of the AL East
Yes.
is the Yankees and the Red Sox,
Okay.
as opposed to the A's and the Astros.
that is very good
And
news
the
that I
Angels.
hope that we do not have to consider. And also
I
can
also
change pretty wildly in the last 10 games of the year.
I don't know how many total. The Mariners have, I believe, 10 remaining AL West games. So they'd have to do pretty damn poorly to lose
Okay.
that tiebreaker. They do need to go at least 6-1 in their 7 remaining games against Texas to get the tiebreaker, but have already clinched the tiebreaker with Houston.
There we go. And also, if they go 6-1 against Texas,
They're probably not
probably
gonna
not
go
worried
to
about a tiebreaker.
It's really those 3 teams for 2 spots. The Mariners and the Rangers both at about 70% playoff odds according to Fangraphs. The Blue Jays,
Isn't it those
That's
two,
60%.
those teams for? You're not counting the Astros. It's the
again,
Astros, the
according to
Rangers.
Fangraphs, it's really 3 teams for 2 spots.
Fangraphs can
I believe the Astros have a much easier schedule the rest of the way as well.
maybe that's it.
Although, again, part of that was probably playing the A's, and they have not done so hot in that particular series yet.
I'm not willing to write off to just say that the Astros are in. It is 4 teams for 3 spots.
I mean, their playoff odds are 96%.
That can change very quickly.
I suppose it can. The Mariners' odds were over 80% for a long period of time. Anything else on the Mariners?
It was a brutal weekend, and it was one of those things
It was
where
a really frustrating Friday and Saturday, because they had opportunities to win both of those games.
and I thought that they were going to win at various different times. But this is why this is why Fangraphs has I understand it. Like, that's why the Astros are, if they have an easier schedule, at 96%. Because playing a team like the Rays are relentless when you play them. They are probably the team that I would want to see the least in the playoffs of anybody in the American League.
I stand by my continual take on this podcast, that they are the best team in the American League, excluding nobody. Although the Astros put up some pretty impressive stats against the Rangers.
Turns out
in
when
that
Kyle
series.
Tucker is playing that they're a little bit more dangerous. But then losing 2 in a row to the A's. So
Somehow the Rangers still second in run differential at plus 151. Tampa Bay 197, lapping the field.
And the Rangers seem like they're playing quite a bit better these days, with a couple of wins against the Blue Jays. But, I mean, they kind of just have to win every single game against bad teams from here on out. Every single game matters. And, you know, if they can win 2 of 3 against the Dodgers, that would be huge. But they have to beat the Angels, and they have to beat the A's. This isn't a baseball situation where you can just win series. That is out now. You have to win every single game in this run up to the playoffs, especially if they're trying to win the AL West.
Yes, that in particular.
But
I
at the
agree.
same time, the way that the Mariners have hit in particular, there have been some moments where they were down, but been generally pretty opportunistic, similar to what I was talking about getting the opportunity and then blowing it immediately after. Like, I feel like they can win every single game irrelevant of who they're playing. And it's a nice place to be for the Mariners. I'm not sure if that was the case last year. They just need to kind of put all of the pieces together at the right time, which they did do during their long winning streak or multiple winning streaks in a row. They just have to have a line, the hitting and the pitching and the bullpen. And I think it's one of those things that we've seen can happen. So if they can get hot during the stretch, I still am not writing off the AL West, given the roster. I think this roster is strong enough that they can win the AL West.
And you shouldn't write it off. I mean, Fangraphs gives them a 20% chance to win the division. Like, the Astros are the clear favorites, but their 96% playoff odds are mostly because, you know, they have some margin for error to drop off and still be one of the wild cards.
Every baseball team at this part of the season is 1 4-game winning streak or 1 4-game losing streak away from their playoff odds, wildly changing.
Not the A's. All right, let's wrap up
Of those teams who are in the mix.
with UW football. which got a 43-10 win Saturday against Tulsa, narrowly failing to cover the spread in that one. It was weird because Baby Fantasy Genius was with us at the game and was complaining how bad the Huskies were. And objectively they weren't, but it was kind of a disappointing performance because, to the extent that the Huskies didn't score, it was more because it felt like they stopped themselves rather than Tulsa stopped them. Even though I think Tulsa had a much better game plan in this one to take away the explosive plays more than Boise State did, at the expense of UW having a lot more success with the east-west stuff, particularly wide receiver runs in this game. Do you have no thoughts on this?
I was reading ahead in the notes.
Oh, okay.
I was not. I was not listening to what you were saying.
The game on Saturday, it was sloppy.
It was a little sloppy. It was fine. I think the Huskies played really well.
They played well. I mean, you had a key drop by Jalen McMillan on what would have been a touchdown, followed by a fumble that helped keep things relatively close at halftime. I was not impressed with a couple of penalties by Mikel Esteen, who was out there at safety, with Asa Turner leaving early in that one. Still TBD on his status for this weekend among a handful of injuries. Obviously, the run game continuing to struggle has gotten a lot of focus. Dylan Johnson did not play in this one. Will Nixon got the start. Continued to be, I think, the most effective of the UW running backs. Sam Adams II got a lot more opportunity in this one. A high percentage of his carries this season have gone for negative yardage, which is not ideal. We also saw a little of Danielle Nagata, the Arizona State transfer. Still not seen Richard Newton on an offensive play.
Interesting.
Even though he's been on kickoff return team.
So he's hypothetically healthy, but
I guess so.
maybe he's still coming back from injury.
Yeah. I'm not terribly concerned with that. There's obviously at some point you are going to need to be able to run the ball to close out games and things of that nature. But, the idea that they need to have balance, have you not watched college football before? Have you not seen air raid teams?
Who is talking about this? Who are you talking to?
Well, there was a headline in the Seattle Times.
Was there?
That posed this question.
I saw the Seattle Times straight up. Things are so bad for the Seahawks. They're doing Let's Remember Some Years.
Are they? I didn't see that.
I almost tried to work it into the take, but I was like, damn, Seattle Times. I know that we invented remembering things that happened in the past.
Yeah.
And they were just week by week, we're going to remember this team. And it's just
wait, which team?
The Super Bowl winning teams. It's been a decade.
Yeah,
but I was like, wow, things aren't that bleak for the Seahawks after week one, but okay, Seattle Times. Yeah.
Wait, is this our anniversary pod? Oh, it completely blanked right up. This is our 10th anniversary pod
today.
You'll love to celebrate that. An hour and 12 minutes into the podcast.
Cheers to 10 years. We're going to talk about some really fun stuff coming up here with Michigan State.
I'm out of
Oh
beer.
my God. Wow, that was not.
When was our original episode? I need to put this in the rundown that it's at the hour and 12-minute mark that we remember that it is our 10th anniversary podcast.
We were so upset celebrating our 10-year anniversary.
Okay, hold on here. We going back. Who won that Coors Light debate poll back in September? The inaugural Fabulous Peltoncast was posted on September 12th, 2020.
Wow, it is exactly a decade?
It is exactly 10 years where we talked about the Huskies were playing at Illinois that year.
Wow.
Also a Big Ten
Big
opponent.
Ten matchup.
Yeah.
I barely remember that game. I think we kind of crushed Illinois.
The segments included tailgating and fantasy football. There was no roundup.
You don't want to talk about fantasy football this week, do you?
No, I lost to a 6-year-old.
You definitely lost to Baby convincingly. How did that one feel?
Destroyed by Baby as Fantasy Genius.
How did that one feel? I want to tell you, after 10 years, you've aged.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, I'll always remember the episode. The one good episode.
Which one was that?
I can't remember.
After the Super Bowl?
No, definitely not after the Super Bowl.
After the NFC Championship game, actually.
What a great 10 years it was. Really.
It's improved the audio quality.
That's true. For some of it.
Definitely.
We're going to do way more for Randy going to Taco Times than us doing 10 years of podcasts, but
Oh, yeah. It's all fair.
Who would have thought 10 years ago that we would be the co-hosts of keeping it 150 Costco pod.
We never really imagined it. What the hell were we talking about beforehand?
Well, I think we were just about to talk about Michigan State to celebrate 10 years.
Let's keep finishing the UW footballs last week.
Okay.
Anyways, the Seattle Times remembering some years, the Seahawks 2013 Super Bowl season.
Just remember
which
some Peltoncast. That's what we
obviously-
should do is go back and re-listen to episodes one at a time, one per week, and then talk about those old episodes.
I believe we've already said that's going to be Jibber's podcast.
Reviewing, please do not listen to any early episodes of the Peltoncast.
Cannot recommend it. Anyways, I think it's good. Like the Seahawks, the Huskies are only clearly good at one of kind of the, if you want to say pass offense, pass defense, run defense. They're clearly only clearly good in one of those four things. Fortunately, pass offense is by far the most important.
They're
thing
good
to
in the
get.
one that matters.
And I think the pass defense, I mean,
We don't know about the defense really.
Tulsa, who knows what test it was. Cardell Williams, who had played so well in week one, was not effective before leaving the game.
I will say
Saturday.
that there were 2 weeks in a row that we talked about quarterbacks who had been good. I mean, you were kind of scared of Boise State's quarterback, right?
Correct. Taylor
And
Graham.
he looked terrible in that game,
I
right?
would go that far. I would definitely not go that far.
Definitely didn't look good. And UW definitely neutralized him as a runner. I actually think after 2 weeks, I think we can confidently say the UW defense is improved.
I mean, with Jabbar Muhammad looks very reliable as a cornerback, which is one more reliable cornerback than they had last season. And, we'll see about what happens with Davon Banks, who did end up getting the start last week instead of Elijah Jackson at that other spot. The Seahawks, I don't know why I keep calling them, because they're in the last segment here. The Huskies are 44th.
Been
in
10 years of podcasting.
defensive-
Getting older.
Wow, I'm losing my memory. Huskies 44th in defensive FPI efficiencies thus far. They finished 63rd last year, so
not
that would
bad.
be an improvement.
Where are they offensively?
I believe they are 5th.
Okay.
They finished 6th last year. They're 4th.
There we go.
Yeah. They're very good at the offense. Again, despite not running the football.
It's almost like it doesn't matter.
John Donovan in shambles.
Yeah.
Wonder what John Donovan's up to these days. He's working.
Offensive coordinator for the Seahawks. Did you know they didn't run any play action?
Penix 4th in QBR thus far, by the way, which is much better. You'll recall last year's QBR was kind of even as good as he was. John Donovan. Where is John Donovan? Senior offensive analyst for the Florida Gators. Oh, no.
Oh no.
Happy belated birthday.
Yes,
to,
he is.
Happy belated birthday to John Donovan, who celebrated his 49th birthday on Monday.
Oh Lord.
All right, well, Saturday, the Huskies faced their first Power 5 opponent of the season, a future Big Ten rival in Michigan State. And this is a game that suddenly is overshadowed by news about Michigan State's football team off the field. On Saturday, USA Today reported that Brenda Tracy, a survivor of a gang rape involving members of the Oregon State football team who subsequently founded the nonprofit Set the Expectation to educate players and encourage them to join the fight against sexual and interpersonal violence, had filed a Title IX complaint against Tucker. Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker. Tracy speaks regularly to teams around the country, including multiple visits to Michigan State since Tucker became head coach. She alleged in the complaint that during a routine phone call that took place while Tucker was traveling on university business, he masturbated without her consent. In his statement to Title IX investigators, Tucker acknowledged masturbating but said that they had consensual phone sex. Corroborating evidence, although not definitive, supports Tracy's version of events and not Tucker's. A formal hearing on the Title IX allegation was scheduled for October 5th through 6th, but Tucker remained the acting head coach until he was suspended without pay on Sunday after this story became public. MSU interim president Teresa Woodruff said at the time, "This step, suspending Mel Tucker without pay, is necessary and appropriate for today's circumstances. These actions are not taken lightly." Secondary coach Harlan Bennett was named the acting head coach for Michigan State, while former Spartans head coach Mark D'Antonio came out of retirement to serve as associate coach. And, Obviously the football part of this is not the important part. That's, what happened to a rape survivor. It's alleged to have happened to a rape survivor here. But the line of UW at Michigan State opened at Huskies minus 11.5 before jumping to minus 16 on Saturday. So, that is a substantial swing based off of this news and the fact that Mel Tucker will not be on the sidelines on Saturday, and just kind of this chaos for the Michigan State program heading into the game.
Yeah, I mean, a shocking story and a shocking situation to have happened. But obviously UW needs to play a football game against Michigan State, and a team that they beat last year at home. And curious how that situation is going to be different, how that team looks this year, a year later, Michigan State, which looks very different than they did when they came into UW as a top 10 ranked team. Now I think the expectations for Michigan State obviously very different, and seeing that initial line of minus 11 as the home team.
Yeah, with that 39-28 loss at Husky Stadium presaged a down season for the Spartans, who lost 4 in a row, starting with that one, finished 5-7. Aside from a 2-5 record in Tucker's first year as head coach, which was shortened by COVID, the first year without a bowl appearance for Michigan State since 2016. Sandwiched in between was the 11-2 season that earned Tucker a 10-year, $95 million contract that is, obviously in jeopardy with this Title IX hearing. Michigan State was off to a 2-0 start with wins over Central Michigan and FCS School Richmond, both at home. Quarterback Peyton Thorne, who played pretty well in that game at UW, transferred to Auburn, was replaced by backup Noah Kim, who had 19 career pass attempts in 3 years entering this season. Kim has thrown for 571 yards and 5 touchdowns in the first 2 games with 10.8 yards per attempt. But after accounting for opposition, QBR has him 8th in the Big Ten with a weaker rating than Thorne had last year. UConn transfer Nate Carter has 224 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground at 6.1 yards per attempt. It's a balanced receiving attack for Michigan State with 3 players over 100 yards, nobody with more than 135, which is kind of an off game for Roma Dunze and Jalen McMillan. Defense was the big weakness for Michigan State last year. They ranked 80th in FPI efficiency after finishing 21st in 2021 when they had that 11-2 season. So far, 39th. They have 10 sacks through 2 games, including 7 against Richmond, but they had 12 through their first 2 games last year and did not sack Michael Penix Jr., who, was sacked so rarely last season, as they kind of got torched by the UW defense in that one.
And I think this is a Michigan State team that hasn't been particularly tested on the field that much this season, especially in the same way. Obviously, UW hasn't played outside of home either, but a much more difficult game against Boise State in the opening match, and even probably Tulsa as well. So they've definitely played some stronger opponents. They're a better team. They were a better team last year. And team
Tulsa does rate 7 spots better than Central Michigan. They're pretty similar.
A team that also, you look at the Texas victory against Alabama that happened. The team that is relatively similar to the team that they played in the bowl game, right? They didn't have Bijan Robinson, but they didn't also this last weekend. You have to say,
didn't have Rashawn Johnson either.
Really? I didn't even know Rashawn Johnson went to Texas.
Yeah, he was Bijan Robinson's back. That's where I learned about him.
And he didn't play in that game either.
He also
they were on
sat
their
out
third
the
running
game,
back. Okay.
Touchdown in week 1 for Rashawn Johnson.
But this UW football team has been playing pretty well for a pretty long period of time right now. And, it's been since they went into the desert, tough game against UCLA, went into the desert last year, since they've been tested.
So have you seen the storyline?
What is that?
UW football on grass.
I'm not sure that I really buy it.
They are, Christian Cable did the math against the spread, 3-9 against the spread, 4-8 straight up in their last 12 games on grass.
And this is under Michael Penix under Kalen DeBoer. This is
going back to the Chris Peterson era. 5-9 overall, 4-10 against the spread, I should say.
I feel like this is where is their grass in the Pac-12?
So this is the thing that I think is worth noting, is there's a potential confounding variable here, which is, it turns out you don't put grass in places where it's cold, generally speaking, Michigan State being an exception to this. It's UCLA, Arizona State, Stanford, USC, obviously then a number of bowl games.
Basically the Pac-12 South.
Yeah. but not Arizona, notably, where they have also struggled at times on the road and has similar heat is the confounding variable. Also, many of their bowl games have been played. Obviously, the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl against Penn State. Colorado is the other team in the Pac-12 that has a grass field. They lost their last two there, but previously had a couple of blowout wins at Colorado.
Causation is not necessarily correlation.
That's the opposite.
Correlation is not necessarily causation.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
And
Usually I'm the one delivering that phrase on the podcast.
this is something where these are numbers, but I am not concerned about this whatsoever.
I don't think it's a big
I don't
issue.
think
if it was,
the Huskies are not going to lose the game, and we're going to be like, grass! You know what I mean? Like,
it is amusing to know that the Huskies need to touch grass.
so you said Arizona doesn't?
Yes, they have a turf field.
So they lost one game last year on grass.
No, Arizona State does have grass. So both of the games they lost last year.
Oh, I thought
were
they
in
lost
fact
to
on
Arizona
grass.
last year. That was Arizona State they lost to?
It's a sunny Saturday in Tempe, not in Tucson.
Okay.
Get that straight.
The offense still looked pretty good in those games.
This is correct.
I don't buy it.
Maybe the defense is too used to being too fast on turf. I don't know. I don't really know the causal explanation here.
We're going a little deep there. No, I'm not paying attention to this.
Grass and turf is the big story of the week, though, with Aaron Rodgers' Achilles injury being attributed to MetLife Stadium's turf field. And NFL players' desire to basically outlaw turf because the injury incidence is higher on turf than on grass. And there's also an interesting post. Sounder at Heart had this, that the Seahawks and Lumen Field is due to have its field replaced after this season. They made the case that they should put in grass now because of the fact that they're going to need to have it in for the 2026 World Cup.
Sounder at Heart made the case. So
Yeah.
after the season, they were going to go to grass.
They will have to have it for the 2026 World Cup. We'll have to have it at least temporarily for the 2024 Copa America to be played in the U.S.
And the Seahawks are fine with converting to grass.
Pete Carroll said it's worth more study. So
Pete Carroll might do some independent study that we're
Okay.
not sure
Okay.
about. Pete Carroll's studying isn't great. Let's keep Pete Carroll off the internet. Let's do whatever we can.
as we studied the fourth down research.
I think it's also football, and it's a very dangerous sport. I don't know.
I think it's very difficult to attribute an individual injury. My one concern about some of the studies, and this goes to what we were just saying, is like if you're comparing grass fields to turf fields, it's not like those are randomly distributed. You know, you don't have like, well, let's put a turf field here and we don't flip a coin and decide whether to put a turf field in or a grass field. You put grass fields where it's best to grow grass, and you put turf where it's more difficult to keep grass.
Yeah.
So therefore, the fact that a grass field is safer in Los Angeles doesn't necessarily mean that a grass field is going to be safer in December in Seattle when it's all
Do
torn up in
injuries
the rain.
occur more often in cold environments than in warm environments?
I don't know anything data on that one. But I will say, the evidence generally, grass is preferred for a reason. I will also say
The grass is greener.
that. Yes, there you go. We've come to that conclusion on this podcast. Anyways, back to UW and Michigan State.
I think UW is a very good team. That's it. I think UW is a very good team that has looked very good for many games in a row against pretty difficult opponents along the way. And I will feel confident.
Also worth noting, didn't win a lot of games on the artificial turf of Autzen Stadium for a long period of time. Weird.
I am unconcerned with the grass, and I think that UW should win this game. I think the spread is a little bit high.
It seems a little bit high. I also thought that about the Boise State game, so take that for what it's
But they
worth.
didn't cover in the Tulsa game. I think it's like a 75% chance.
I mean, the Tulsa game they ended up missing because of the fact that they kicked a field goal that went off the upright and out. Part of the sloppiness and the special teams issue for them.
But I think it's about a 75% chance of victory.
That sounds about right to me.
We're agreeing.
Yeah.
But I mean, a 16-point favorite would imply probably a much higher percentage.
Yes, and FPI only has it at 66%. So
Okay. I mean, this is a test, obviously, for UW. early on. I think it's important that they do have these tests and play these big games. And I think they will have played 2 of them before conference play. So they'll be set up in a good position going into conference play. They will have experienced this, one at home, one on the road, against very, very good teams. And, no matter what happens, I think that they will be they'll be very prepared for an extraordinarily difficult Pac-12 schedule.
By the way, Boise lost at home to UCF 18-16 last Saturday. I don't know how good UCF is at this point. I have really no context for that. So, but certainly Boise State has dropped substantially below Michigan State in FPI. UCF is very good, though. They're 31st, so they are actually better than either of the 2 teams UW has faced. So,
well, it's been a good 10 years. Here we are at the end, learning that it's our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah. You probably haven't listened for the full 10 years. You definitely haven't listened for the full 10 years. There was a large period of time where we were not releasing podcasts during that. But
I miss those years. Those were actually my favorite of the 10 years.
For the portions of the 10 years that you've listened to, we thank you for doing so.
Thanks.